So that makes up 100%. Okay, the intracellular fluids are those fluids inside the cell. But it's very important to understand that the dumping ground is in this colloidal connective tissue of the Schad, which is called the interstitial fluid. So if you're not looking, from my perspective, I would attribute, Marie Blecker introducing this to me at a very early stage in my career, because this was something that was very foreign, and I've been talking about this, for 40 years, and I don't understand why people wouldn't connect to it. But it's really, really hard to connect to all you're hearing about. Well, go to your doctor and have a blood test. When's the last time you heard, go to your doctor and have your interstitial fluids tested?
Never.
Never. Unless you're an astronaut with NASA. Okay?
So
and I had an opportunity. I had an opportunity to work on a committee with NASA. So I know what they do and don't do. But, if you're going into space and you're coming back, they want to know how it affects all the body fluids, all the body cells. So guess what? They test the blood, they test the interstitial fluid, and they test the vascular fluid. But nobody else gets that opportunity. Why?
Amazing.
Because if you have the whole picture, that may expose this whole corruption in medical science. Because you can't base, when you look at all the body fluids, you can't base your diagnosis, and I'm speaking for myself, in my opinion, based on my research, you cannot base your conclusions on 10% of the information.
Mm-hmm.
You may, get close to it, even if you're looking at parasites, because the river of life, I call it for people, this is new, I just call it the global ocean.
Mm-hmm.
We have an oceans, we have the Atlantic, we have the Pacific, these global oceans. Okay. Do you think those global oceans have any impact on the rivers and streams and lakes and the landmass? Yeah. I mean, we just recently we're looking at, in the global ocean, we're seeing hurricanes literally destroy, the eastern, from Florida, from Puerto Rico got hit really bad. So,
may I interject here?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah,
so when the body is detoxing, right? The detox comes from the interstitial fluids. That's where the body is expelling poisons and toxins. Is that right?
Yes, that's the septic tank of the body. I hate to think of it like that, but that's where it comes from. So when you pee, you're peeing interstitial fluid. It's not a product of the blood or a product of the intracellular fluid. It's a product of the interstitial fluid that combines those toxins, those metabolic, toxins. Okay, so if you eat something, it can go into the blood, but it really travels, particularly the nanoparticulates and the microparticulates. They travel in this interstitial fluid, and that's a very important point because there's no barriers with nanoparticulates. They go right through everything. So parasites usually stay in the intestinal area unless they're being inoculated, and some of the particulates could pass through, but it's a little more difficult. If we're talking about parasites in the lung, there's barriers that prevent it from going into the interstitial, because once it goes into the interstitial fluid, it travels everywhere. That's why.
Wow.
That's why if you have an injury to the breast, or if the body's pushing waste out into the breast and it's injured the tissue, it'll form an encapsulation to protect the healthy tissue. Because once this has a leakage, for example, if you do a biopsy, you literally spill the waste of that tumor, and guess where it goes? Into the interstitial fluid, and guess where it goes? To every gland, every organ. This is what causes metastasis.
Wow.
Cancer metastasis to say, well, now it's affecting my liver. Now it's affecting my brain. It affects every organ to a lesser greater degree, because all this waste travels through this largest organ of the human body. And I have to give credit to Dr. Galina Migalko, because she brought the science from Ukraine, from a very, very significant physicist. And it's this technology that can test these interstitial fluids, so you can know before the diagnosis if you have a pre-condition or a pre-situation that could then manifest itself later. So it picks up information years before the manifestation of a more serious problem. Once it's in the blood, it's like, really? Okay, now we're seeing irregular patterns in the blood.
By then, people send.
But what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I'm seeing the same thing and hearing the same thing. I've also talked with Dr. Peggy Marienfeld. She uses a dark field microscope and analyzes blood, and has been for 20 years. And she tells me that by the time her patients are having such severe adverse reactions to these inoculations, or very, very sick, that's when things show up in the blood, she said. I mean, that's when you can see the parasites, these parasitic organisms. So it coincides with what you're saying. And I also find the same thing, that when people are, well, it depends. It depends. Sometimes we find things in the blood like parasites that even though they feel fine, they don't feel sick. So, I mean, it varies, but that's fascinating. That's extremely important information, especially for me as a doctor. I'm trying to help people detox from poisons. I need to understand how the body really works. And when you're just looking at the blood, you're just only looking at part of it. So, I get asked all the time, what test can I do to know if I'm healthy? What test can I do to know if a person is detoxed? And I think that your test is all that's needed, the urine test, right? Because that's how you can see if your interstitial fluid is healthy, if you're in a healthy pH balanced state where, because as I understand it, right, when your body is in a healthy balanced pH state, what I know about this technology from reading the studies, not looking under the microscope, but reading the studies, how they develop this technology and how it operates. The nanotechnology cannot work when the body is alkaline in a balanced pH state. When the body is acidic, that's when they can self-replicate and disassemble, reassemble, go to targeted places, attack your cells, release payloads in the body, self-replicate. But when your body is in a pH balanced state, an alkaline state, then they cancel and they flush through your body. So this is, I mean, it's what you're teaching is, it's so important.
Yeah. Well, there is technology to do non-invasive medical diagnostics without drawing blood or drawing interstitial fluid, because people say, well, geez, I would like to get that test to test maybe cancer markers or lactic acid markers or citric acid markers or protein markers or whatever it is. But guess what? There's also non-invasive blood testing where you don't have to draw blood and you can have the information on blood counts and blood chemistries within 15 minutes without having to send it off to the lab, put it in a centrifuge, spin it, and then analyze it from there. There's too much room for error. This way, you're able to get immediate results.
Wasted time. If somebody's
wasted
in a
time and worry, stress. Yeah, so that really, really helps out. So the pH of the body fluids, the oxidative reduction potential, which is the energy of that fluid that surrounds every cell, is uniquely different in each body fluid. For example, the ideal pH of blood is 7.36. Okay, and if it doesn't stay in that range, if it drops to, let's say, 7.1, you're in a coma.
Wow.
So the blood has to get rid of its waste. So if you're drinking alcohol, the alcohol doesn't stay in the blood. The majority of it gets pushed out, if you keep drinking, into the interstitial fluid. And guess what you do? You run out to the bathroom and get rid of it. Or if it builds up and builds up and the stomach can't alkalize it at a pH of 8.4, you end up throwing up. So the reason alcoholics throw up is because the stomach, which the main purpose is to alkalize any toxic food or drink with a compound called sodium bicarbonate. And I want you to understand, anybody that's listening to this, because I get chastised and ridiculed and fact checked, or by I don't know what to call it. Yeah, smeared, what have you. That Dr. Young promotes baking soda IVs, which is hilarious. No, I actually promote an alkalizing lifestyle and elements that will help the stomach to produce the baking soda, which it does every second, every minute, every day, every week of your life. That's what it does. It takes water, it takes carbon dioxide, and it takes salt. That's why salt's so important, and that's why I'm so grateful that you are an advocate of salt, and you talk about it and share about the importance. But the stomach can't operate without salt. The blood can't operate without salt. Salt and water is the key. That's why your tears are salty, your urine is salty. If it's not salty, if it's sweet, I mean, that was how they determined whether you were diabetic or not. So the stomach ideal pH is actually in an alkaline state, and its compound that releases is sodium bicarbonate. People don't understand that the small intestine, the ideal pH is 8.4. The blood pH 8.40 with an energy at negative 80 millivolts. So you probably heard this.
Wait, but did you just say
don't drink water with your meals? Don't drink alkaline water with your meals. It will neutralize the hydrochloric acid. You've heard that before, right?
Yeah. Well, not about the alkaline water.
Yeah.
I've heard not.
Well, drinking high pH water will neutralize the hydrochloric acid, and you can't digest your food. Well, guess what? Your stomach doesn't digest food. Swallow a piece of meat and then check your bowels within 2 or 3 weeks. You'll probably see it come out the other end. Because it doesn't digest. If you take corn,
right? Our mouth,
peanuts.
This is where we digest. This is where we digest.
Your teeth is the only instrument that breaks that down. But the interstitial fluid ideal pH is 8.40 at negative 80 millivolts. The blood is at 7.36 at negative 20 millivolts, where the